daily show. My name is Christina Previtt, and you're seeing me a little bit out of context in that I am usually here on Monday and Wednesday. You all know me as one of the lead faculty for both the clinical management of the fitness, athlete, pregnancy, and postpartum, as well as the modern management of the older adult curriculum. And today I have stolen the mic from Jeff Moore to talk to you all a little bit about wearing multiple hats and trying to figure out how to do that. But before I do that, today is Gut Check Thursday. Anytime I see a death by, I always get a little bit worried and concerned. It's definitely worse when there's a barbell in it. So Dustin and Jeff Musgraves, who's a TA for Modern Management, they tackled this workout live with the ICE crew at 7:45 this morning, and they got into the 10-minute mark. So to give you a bit of a ballpark, you were going to be doing a lot of full cleans. My weightlifter brain has to say that that's just a clean, but you know, the CrossFit world, it's always the bit of a jabby fight between weightlifters and CrossFitters, and I just love it. Okay, so you guys know me as lead faculty here. I am also doing my PhD part-time in the area of high-intensity resistance training with at-risk older adults, looking into frailty, mobility, disability, and transitions into institutionalized care. I'm a mom. I'm a mom of one. My daughter is almost 2. I am the owner of Stave Off Physiotherapy and Exercise Facility, so I essentially own a physiotherapy clinic and a gym with my husband. I hold a full caseload, and I try, COVID's put this on the back burner, but I try to still compete in the 64 kilo weight class for weightlifting. So for all intents and purposes, I do hold or do try and juggle a lot of different hats. And I oftentimes get questions from clinicians, particularly a lot of mom clinicians, around how do you just juggle all of these things and try and do it well. So the first thing that I'm going to say is that sometimes I just don't do it well. Social media can be something that makes us put our best front forward, and I try to be authentic online. But sometimes I just don't do it well. And, you know, sometimes I am really stressed out and I'm really close to burnout, and I have to take a step back and recalibrate and protect my mental health. And so if you think that someone that you look up to that is a role model or a person that you are following online has it all together all the time, the first thing that I want to tell you is that it's just simply not true. Some days I feel like a rock star. Some days I feel like a complete failure, and I just recognize that that's par for the course, and that it's okay to feel that way. The second thing is I wanted to kind of bring up in this space is around the term balance. And I've spoken to this on my personal Instagram page. I tend to not like the word balance, because when we think about balance, we kind of think about this spreadsheet where there's going to be these checks and balances that we're going to be able to move them around, and it's going to equal 0, or it's going to be this perfect way that you have balanced the different responsibilities in your life. And for me, it just wasn't a fluid construct that made sense to me. And so for myself, the way that oftentimes I consider the different hats that I wear is through calibration. And what I mean by that is that there are different times in my day, different times in our seasons in the year, where I am calibrating up and down for different roles. A good example is that we have just done a big revamp for multiple ICE courses over the last couple of months. We tend to do this towards the end of the year so that we start new years with fresh content, we update the literature, et cetera, et cetera. We want to make sure that we are at the top of our game with our in respect to our content areas for you all. And because of that, my calibration was much higher for ICE over the last couple of months. So I have been more actively involved. Probably a good part of my day, most days, has been in the research world. And the second recalibration has been with COVID. So I'm a business owner that owns a gym. The gym industry has been very strongly hit. And so there's been a lot of times over the last year where I have been moving around my schedule a lot to be working with all of the new guidelines and things that need to be shifted in terms of allowing my business to open when it's allowed to and closing it down and shifting things when it isn't. And so what that has meant is, from a calibration perspective, my PhD has unfortunately been on the back burner. And now that things are starting to equilibrate a little bit and we're getting a sense of potentially reopening and the vaccinations are starting to roll out, now I have time to bring that administrative load down and my PhD comes up. And again, I'm starting to see a little bit more of this checks and balances. So I always think, like, people think that I'm kind of going full steam ahead in all of my roles all the time. And that's just simply not true. And you have to recognize that when you're prioritizing one thing, if you're trying to prioritize 8 things, you're probably not doing 8 things very well. But if you're prioritizing one thing, putting that at the front burner and then like shifting to your next project or putting your attentions into different things, it can be so much more successful. And over the grand scheme of things, we tend to get overwhelmed by the short term, but when we look at the long term, we see that over the long term, if we can really focus on each project at a time, that we're going to see a huge amount of success in that. So that's number 2, is talking about calibration. The third thing that I wanted to bring up that a lot of times people don't see online is just the massive amount of support that is involved in my life and that I think is so necessary when you're trying to change practice. I'm going to butcher this quote that Jeff always talks about, that if you want to go, I'm not even going to get it right, but if you want to go far, go together, is basically what he's trying to say. And he's going to make fun of me because he's going to watch this podcast and he's going to be like, oh, Christina, you just butchered that quote. But the idea is that if you don't have a team and you want to try and be a solopreneur, like, that is fantastic for you, but it is so hard to really drive change on your own. It's exhausting. Motivation is a finite resource and it is not there all the time. But when you have a team that has that energy and you guys can lean in to each other, then it's so much easier to wear these hats. And so with my PhD, I have my supervisor who is hugely supportive in my clinical group. At home, I have a massively supportive husband. My husband is amazing, and he does oftentimes a lot of solo parenting so that I can get things done. And that has been a conversation that him and I have had around different phases in the year where he is going to be the one who's more primary parenting and I'm working on different projects. And that works for us and that works for our relationship. And I have in-laws and parents that are willing to help with childcare whenever we need it, especially when we're kind of in panic mode if something goes on with the business. And that support is absolutely massive and is not really highlighted so much when you're seeing my professional career, but is 100% one of the only reasons why I can do what I do. And so my husband is a massive support. He is so willing to take care of my daughter so that I can work on courses and I travel a lot. And so, he is oftentimes home with our dogs, our cats, our chickens, our kids, and running stave off while I'm teaching courses online or in person, hopefully soon. And that has been a massive support for me to be able to do all the things that I want to do in my professional career. In the ICE world, I see that Alex Germano is online. We have a massive support team. So in MMOA, Dustin and I, we rely on each other a lot, and we are just constantly communicating about where we're at in our life. Our TAs are amazing, and they allow our courses to run like well-oiled machines. The same is true in clinical management of the fitness, athlete, pregnancy, and postpartum. Alexis and I, we talk all the time. Our TAs are wonderful, and they are helping facilitate the course. And it allows us to continue getting into the weeds of the research. We talk about the research together in both of those courses, and it is just absolutely wonderful. And I would not be anywhere, I would not be wearing any hats if it wasn't for some of these people who are massive supports. And I think that we need to acknowledge where you are in terms of having supports in your life, and really taking that step back and recognizing who you can lean on, who you maybe can't lean on, and then talking through, like, you know, what's realistic for you in this point in your life. So that's number 3. So number 1 is I don't do it right all the time. And I always joke with Alex Germano about the fact that my house is never clean. Like, that's the part that you guys never see, is like I have someone come in to clean my house, which is amazing, and it helps me, but my house is also like usually an eruption of toddler toys. The second thing is that balance in my mind doesn't exist, and we think about calibration, and that there's going to be different phases where you're focusing on different things, and then that will switch. The third thing is around support and recognizing where your support structures are and how much support you do have, and leaning into them when you need them is number 3. The fourth one that I want to talk about that is kind of pertaining to me is that one of the things that I've fallen into almost like this shame spiral with, if you were all Brene Brown listeners, is the mom guilt. And social media does not help this, around how we need to feel like when we become moms, that being a mom takes over our identity. And being a mom is one of the most transformative things that has ever happened in my life, in any friend's life. It changes everything. You have never realized how being tired until you're at that newborn stage. There's just so much that comes into being a mom. But I was never that person that wanted my entire life to be dictated by being a mom. I always say that being a mom is a part of my identity. It is not my whole identity. And there have been periods in my motherhood journey so far where I have been made to feel bad for having goals professionally, for liking my job professionally, for wanting to still be an athlete, for holding on to those different identifiers in my life. And I have just had to let that go and realize that the person who is making me feel bad about that probably has their own guilt, or their own spirals, or their own comparisons that they are making, in that I can only live in my own truth, in my own context, and that context is specific to me. And so what that means is I love working. I continue to work. I continue to travel. But it also means that when I am with my daughter, I am with my daughter. Like, that's why I always joke about my house not being clean, because I don't have infinite amounts of time with her, because I'm not home with her during the day. So it's a choice between doing the dishes and playing blocks with my kid. I am playing blocks with my kid, and the dishes can wait. And so for me, I just know that because I have all of these other goals, I so much focus on quality time. And my kid is happy, and she's healthy, and she literally wakes up in the morning smiling, like she's just doing so well. And I had to just let go of those feelings of guilt, like I needed to be doing more, or that I was missing the boat, or I wasn't at the exact switching her over from co-sleeping to in the crib at 6 months because I wasn't ready. Like, all these things that can be so overwhelming, especially for any of my female entrepreneurs that are very type A, like those type 1 personalities. It can be very, very challenging to not really beat yourself up about these different things. But I think coming from being a mom entrepreneur, I actually think that being a mom has created different leadership skill sets in me around patience and understanding development. And in the case of being a mom, it's mom development, but also clinician development as a boss who's taking on different clinicians and what they need from me at the very beginning versus when they're more seasoned, and all these different things. And so we can turn and reflect on some of these guilt pieces and just recognize that everybody's life is going to look different. My daughter is seeing me work really hard. She has now come into the gym, or she comes into our garage when we're lifting and tries to load my barbell because she thinks it's fun to get all the different colored weights, and she tries to lift progressively heavier plates. So she started with 0.5 and now she's at 1 and 1.5, and she's just kind of coming into our life that way. And I don't think that there is anything that she is not receiving. And my husband loves being home. The two of us owning the gym together, we always split parenting duties 50-50. And it has allowed us to have a life that works for us. And so every time I think and reflect on these things, I always have to come back to that, and that everybody's sense of balance, what they need, and all those types of things are going to be super important. The last one that I want to touch on is burnout. And for me, I've gone through periods in my career where I felt a little bit more mentally exhausted than others. Oftentimes, these are always periods of high stress, usually relating to things like employment or employees rather, or shifts in contracts, or massive life changes. And I can't talk to you about when you're going to experience that burnout. But what I would say is that this is where kind of leaning into some of your reflective practices are going to be extremely important. I think as clinicians, sometimes so I went to a school, that was very, very focused on feedback, self-feedback, interpersonal feedback, group dynamic feedback, and it was like over and over and over again. And at the time when I was in school, it was like, oh my gosh, if I have to hear feedback again, I'm gonna lose my mind. But as a clinician, especially in those times of high stress, when burnout or just being overwhelmed with everything that's being asked of me is kind of creeping into my mind, I oftentimes take a step back and reflect on where those feelings are coming from. Is there a particular task that is causing me more stress? Is it linked to some emotional things that are independent of work? Is it because of work? Do I need to have a conversation that may not be the easiest conversation to have, but is gonna help me to feel a little bit better? Do I need to push through a little bit until I get to the end of X project? Because sometimes that's what it is. You're just kind of in this fatigue spiral because you have a deadline that's coming up, or something big transformative wise is coming back. For me, burnout is oftentimes when my caseload gets too high and I feel like I end up having to work super late on all of my other projects because I'm seeing 40, 45 clients a week, and I just have to adjust that. And so leaning back on some of those reflective practices, especially when you're in a burnout situation, because you don't want to make a knee-jerk emotional reaction. I just lost my camera there. A knee-jerk emotional reaction and not really sit in those emotions and kind of figure out, where are these coming from? And I think it's a very valuable skill that sometimes we don't rely on enough, and that I think will help you. Last thing, I've been on here way too long, is look for mentors and role models to help. So if you have this goal of where you want to be in your life and you know that there is 1, 2, 3 people who are doing it, reach out to them. Try and hang out with them. Try and be around them in a virtual context. I know that Jeff and Alan, for me, are huge mentors. And so I'm annoying to them because I message them all the time. And I ask their opinions on different things because I respect their opinions. But it helps me navigate these different roles because they all wear different hats and they enjoy being in different roles. And so I lean on them. And so if you have somebody that you look up to, I encourage you to reach out to them and say, can we connect? Can we connect over coffee? Can we connect over, coffee with all the COVID restrictions, but you know what I mean? Can we connect virtually? Can I pick your brain for 15 or 20 minutes? And if they're really busy, that might not be possible. But at least try and at least interact with some of their content online, because those types of role models and getting that authentic opinion on what it's like to be in different situations is going to be really key. All right, I talked for way too long. So things about wearing multiple hats. One is we do not have it together all the time. We never do. I am a mess most of the time. You should talk to my other lead faculty because I am oftentimes running by the seat of my pants. I was literally a minute late because I was behind a snowplow and I left at the exact minute that I had to be here. That's number one. Number two is that your balance points are going to be different than other people's balance points. And what is good for you is good for you, and that's the most important thing. I always think about it as calibration. If balance works for you, then that works for you. And number three is that support is massive. It is massive. I have huge amounts of supports at home. My husband is amazing. My in-laws are amazing. My parents are amazing. They are there. My daycare is amazing. Work life, my lead faculty are amazing. They help me all the time. And my TAs, they are incredible and they help me all the time. And so it is not just me leading a ship, it is a team. And I rely on that team, and I have learned to lean in to that team because it's so, so important. Number four is reflecting on practices. So making sure that if you are feeling burnt out, you need to reflect. Reflect on why you're feeling burnt out. Is it just because you're working too many hours? That can absolutely be it. Is it because you're working a million hours and it's starting to upset your spouse? And is that a conversation that you guys need to start having around, your relationships and expectations and all those things that can be really, really hard on you and can be really hard conversations to have. And then number five is find a mentor or find someone that you look up to, reach out to them, follow them online, try and show, curate your social media so that it's authentic and real and not just so fabricated and filtered and fake that you feel bad, because it's not what you want. So those are my 5 things about wearing a million hats. I hope you all found that helpful. I would love to keep having this conversation. I'm so glad that Jeff gave me the mic, but I'm gonna have to stop talking because I've been talking for almost 25 minutes and we're supposed to be around 15. But I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful Thursday. I hope you get after gut check. It looks so gross. I'm thinking I'm gonna do it later. And I'll see you guys on Mondays or Wednesdays with pregnancy and postpartum and Jerry.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.